Actually, I never understood that because really, lists that run 10 through 1 they're really counting up, aren't they? Or is down? I don't.
Well, I think you have to look at it as like counting down to. Well, you're right, I guess.
Yeah, but they're counting up in quality and moving up 2 positions, and yet they say we're counting down. I don't get the whole thing.
I guess counting down is like a time thing. It's like counting down. You're down through time.
Right.
Well, yeah, you're counting down because of each, you're losing it. You're
losing the time.
You're losing time, and as you know, as all of us as we get older, we are losing that precious commodity to us. So,
but if you listen to like Casey Kasem's Top 40 or something, is he dead yet? By the way. Or is he still alive?
No, I don't know if I want to get into
still around.
I
think he's still around.
Has he stopped counting down?
No, we're not counting
top
down.
40 in the sky. I don't think so.
If you listen to the top 40 and they're like,
I didn't mean it like that. I mean,
it was number 12 last week, and it's number 10 this week. It's up 2 notches. I mean,
that's true. That's true. Casey Kasem was always counting up, actually, so it's true.
So should we introduce this to to change this, because it should be you're counting up, not counting down.
I think so.
Okay.
I think the optimist in me wants to say counting up.
Okay, that's good. I'm for that.
Okay, so we're all joined tonight for a special count up of our own individual top 10 favorite films of the 90s, as all lists. We get into the specificity of numbers and what they mean, and is this, sometimes it's really like splitting hairs. So, this is representative of 10 movies that we loved from the 90s and that we'll return to time and again, probably, I'm sure, for all of us. So I'll start. My number 10 is the first of 2 appearances of David Lynch. It's Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, which I think is one of the most harrowing portraits of a tortured adolescent from that decade. I think it's the most searing character portrait he made in his career, and one of the great unsung performances from the lead in the movie. What can I think of her name? Cheryl Lee.
Cheryl Lee, yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful, visceral, and it's I've said it many times, and many other people have too, that it feels like a horror film. But for me, it's a horror film about the ugliest things imaginable: incest and abuse, and and a death that almost serves as a salvation. That her life was so tortured that her death almost takes on an ethereal quality at the end. I think it found a very soulful conclusion to the kind of the Twin Peaks TV series phenomenon. It had its share of quirks in the movie, and if Lynch had been allowed to film, had been allowed to keep all the extra stuff that he filmed from the screenplay, it would have been a lot jokier. So I think, as it is now, the really dark tone of the movie, it works so beautifully, and it's consistent with the character and her journey. Because all the jokey stuff would have detracted from that, and it wouldn't have stayed with me as long. But they had big subplots where they go to something like Argentina or something, and there's a whole mess of other stuff that they were going to put in the screenplay, and that they were going to put in the final edit, and I'm glad they didn't. And I don't understand every beat. I don't feel like I need to necessarily, but. And I will say the David Bowie scene is one of the oddest that Lynch is.
It is
for Lynch.
It is.
That's an odd one.
But kudos to you for picking that.
I know a lot of people love that movie, and it was derided when it came out because people wanted the TV show, and they weren't quite ready to take it on its own terms. But I know that a lot of people have come around to Fire Walk with Me.
Well, I think that's because of our show. I think that's because of the Lynch tribute we had 5.5 years ago. I think you really helped put that film out there on the forefront for a lot of people. Because a lot of people, I think you're absolutely right. People do, because of the popularity of the TV show initially, that's what people wanted. But, here Lynch gets to go where he's really at home on the big screen. And, I'm surprised people didn't give him the benefit of the doubt, when that came out.
Yeah, but people focus on the weirdness and that sort of thing, and there is a level of absurdity in all of his films. But what they miss in this one in particular, I think, is the deep soulfulness. You know, it is deeply felt when it comes to that lead character.
It has a lot of like sort of like empathy for her. I think, and what she's going through, and you know, I mean, you know, we've already talked about you know, a little bit about Cheryl Lee, but I think she's really the serious like MVP of this movie. I mean, she is absolutely superb in the movie, and you know, the show was unusual because the character that we were so interested in was not in the show. Really, it was just in the show as an idea, you know, as a sort of springing point. So, but that movie is great. I mean, I'll tell you another thing. There's one scene in that movie that I really remember most. And by the way, the movie did make my top 100 list, but in the 90s, like around 94 or something like that. But I really love that moment where she goes to that bar, and the music is so mixed, so incredibly loud that I think they have to have subtitles in the movie in order to let you know what people are saying. And
which I think was something that came up in post. But that's indicative of a big strength with David Lynch in his use of sound.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, no one has. The only director that's ever come close to replicating sound in a environment like that might be David Fincher for when he did the scenes in
Social Network.
Social Network, you know. That is something that is just such a detail that's just so wonderful in that film, and the film is filled with wonderful details like that. So,
all right, Jerry, what's your first pick?
Okay, you know, I don't know. I have talked about this film in the past. I don't know if it was on this show. But it is by a wonderful director who is still making movies, and that would be 1992's Gas Food Lodging, Allison Anders. I watched this on videotape, I guess in the winter of 93, I want to say, when it first came on videotape. And I'd never seen anything like it. Now I have to tell you, it did sort of remind me of Desert Bloom and other movies from the 80s, but there was something about this movie that I just really felt it was very liberating, and I felt it was very informative because I just not really seen anything quite like it, but I really liked her voice, Allison Anders' voice, and what she was willing to put out. And there are a couple of beautiful scenes in the movie between Ione Skye and Feroza Balk. I mean, I think these are their best roles to an extent. I mean, really the richest characters they played. But I just thought it was a great introduction. I know that if I'm not mistaken, Anders had done, there's a Border Radio, is that the movie that she did?
Yeah.
Border Radio, and that's good. That's a good movie. I didn't see that until like Criterion released that a couple of years ago. But I really enjoyed this, and I enjoy Allison Anders' work quite a bit. I was tempted to actually pick Sugartown over this. Or is that the one about the music scene in L.A., if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
Is it called Sugartown, or am I thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Sugartown, yeah.
That's a great.
Mel Gibson's version was Sugar Tits. But,
I like that version, too, and I've seen that 15 times. But I like this movie. I think it's well done. It's a great coming-of-age story.
This was the apex of, the indie film movement, where a lot of people were getting chances that normally would not have.
Right.
Probably propelled by 89's Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yeah.
Soderbergh.
It comes with that, definitely. I mean.
Yeah, and Allison Anders, I mean, she made some great movies, and she's still working. I'm sure it's probably with the changing climate, it's really difficult to finance projects. But, we were talking about, female directors not too long ago.
We were talking about females last week.
And Allison Anders is a great figure from these early days of the indie movement in the 90s that came out. But
no doubt.
We're remiss to not mention Adrian Shelley, who sadly was killed. But I think of movies and these are movies from women about women that tell the woman's story from an honest perspective. Adrian Shelley did as well. I mean, just her last movie, Waitress, was one of the most delightful movies I saw that year.
And she's an important figure, Adrian Shelley. I mean, thank you for mentioning her. I mean, Waitress is excellent. But I mean, she was really like Hal Hartley's muse, and those movies, The Unbelievable Truth and Trust, and I think I like Hal Hartley. I like him more than probably most people, and I think his heyday was this period, this decade. The 90s really was his strong point, where he, I think, did his very best work.
And Allison's on Facebook. She communicates.
Oh, I thought, yeah. I mean, she's very. I mean, look. Even there's an interview today in the New York Times. De Niro says he and Scorsese have a hard time trying to get a movie. He says even for them, it's a hard time getting a movie made. And imagine how hard it is for someone like Allison Anders to try to get something launched. I mean,
that's for sure.
I mean, so if those guys are willing to admit it, think how hard it is for someone like Anders or something. And she continued to make really very diverse movies. The follow-up to this is Mi Vida Loca. Completely not what you would expect, but it's a very good movie. And then she did Grace in My Heart, then Sugartown, and I mean, I
love Grace in My Heart, by the way.
That's a good movie. That's a good little movie.
It was we reminisce about the '70s, and they let the auteurs do what they wanted because they were so uncertain of what would sell, and let the inmates run the asylum in a way. And for a brief period of time in the '90s, we had that again in this little subsection of filmmaking.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of heavenly in retrospect.
Yeah.
So, Dean, what's your first pick?
Life is Sweet is my number 10 pick. It's by Michael Lee. It's from 1991. It's a British movie about a family, a middle-class family, like a lot of his movies. It's about a middle-class family living in the center of London. It's possibly his most uplifting movie, I would say. I mean, maybe with the exception of maybe like Topsy Turvy or something like that. But Life is Sweet is really, it's really not it's wonderful in the sense that Alison Steadman plays a very, very, both Steadman and Broadbent play very, very effusive, wonderful parents. Like, these are the parents that you absolutely would love to have. They're funny, they're fun, they're always, they try to be as understanding as they possibly can be, but they're faced with Jane Horrocks as one of their daughters that is completely beyond understanding, and that creates a lot of the drama that's in the movie. I mean, and we're talking about, there are moments in this movie where you're going from extremely high, wow, this is the funniest movie I've ever seen, to oh my God, this is I can't even watch this anymore. It's just too difficult to watch, So it's it hits so many levels. It's got a beautiful score. It's like all of Mike Lee's movies do, by the way. I think his the people who he has scoring the movies just do an amazing job of that. And it is a very difficult movie to see here in the U.S. because I still have my VHS copy of it, and I had that signed by Mike Lee when I met him up in New York. But it's difficult to find here in the U.S., and I can understand why people listening to the show might say, where can I find this or whatever. It's a difficult movie to find, and I don't understand why that is so. I mean, and so to me, this is the movie that should be released on Criterion immediately. But finally, I want to say that it's just an astounding emotional ride, this movie, and The other two awards that won from the National Society of Film Critics, which I should reiterate again, is the best critics association out there. I mean, always picks, generally, I mean, like 98% of the time picks really what seriously is the best of the year. And they also picked Stedman as Best Actress and Jane Horrocks as Best Supporting Actress, and that's completely deserved. I just, you know, I hope that people out there can find a way to see Life is Sweet, because it really is one of the best. I mean, one of the best I've ever seen.
Pretty sweet. Jerry, what's your next one?
I don't even know if I have this on DVD. I know I have the VHS. The Usual Suspects.
Mm-hmm.
I love this movie. I love this movie for a lot of different reasons. But I went back to see it again with a friend after I went with my family. We went out to dinner. We went downtown to see it. I dragged everyone because I read about the movie in Film Threat. It was a limited release. And I was like, no, we got to go see this movie. No, I don't want to go see the Brothers McMullen. I'm sure it's a good film, but no, we're going to go see this. And it was. I like Ed Burns. I can relate to Ed Burns. He's made the same film over and over again, hoping that he can make it better. And I like that. I love Ed Burns. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you. But I really wanted to see The Usual Suspects. I'm like, this is going to be good. It's going to be awesome. If it's not, you guys can beat the shit out of me when we get out of the theater. Thankfully, it was good, because I would not have survived that. But I did not know who Bryan Singer was. I knew who Kevin Spacey was, obviously, from Wise Guy, and obviously The Ref and things like that. I knew all the actors in the movie. And it was just incredible. It was a film that, like, really forced you to pay attention. It was really the old adage, you watch the movie, don't let the movie watch you. And it's a guys movie. And what was the first of a series of guys movies, because you get two really bigger movies at the end of the year that are all about guys at their best and worst. But this was just incredible. I thought at the time it gave Bryan Singer at the time gave Tarantino a run for his money with this. It's just
Did you because there was similar talk involved in Mission Impossible, first Mission Impossible. Did you understand it?
I understood it, but it caught me off guard. You know, I didn't. You know, I had to go back and watch it again, like I said, because I understood it though, but I didn't. You know, I didn't catch all the clues and everything. If that's what you mean. When you mean understand,
well, I'm talking about if you go through the machinations of plot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people complained, just as Mission Impossible, that there wasn't. It seemed confused at times. There wasn't a clarity in terms of.
I never understood that even about Mission Impossible, what people were talking about. I thought they were very...
Oh, come on, you can get that. I mean, I'm just talking about Mission Impossible now. I mean, like, that movie is kind of a mess. I don't know what's going on in that movie.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the movie, but I do think it makes sense, though. I mean, I was really surprised.
Well, it might make sense on the second or third viewing.
No, I've only seen it the one time. I mean, I think it makes. I mean, it's a Mission Impossible film. Can I be
so you don't require it to make any sense?
No, I don't think it's that complicated to begin with. I'm really disturbed when people at dinner who are Ivy League educated and work for the Clinton administration tell me they didn't understand it, and I'm like, great, you guys are in. This is just it's a Hollywood studio movie. It's based on a TV show. I don't think Mission Impossible is a complicated film. Now,
but they can't make a movie like that too complicated for its own good, and especially since they didn't have the script ready. I mean, they gave Robert Towne 2 weeks to do a rewrite. And he said, "Well, I can get it a little bit better, but we're not going to be all the way there." I mean, that was some of it that led to those rumors that it was.
But I mean, we've talked about this on the show before. This particular movie, Mission Impossible. I don't think maybe it's just me, and I don't know. Maybe because my friend tripped over the seats in front of him to try to get popcorn. I don't know, but it just doesn't. Mission Impossible is not like Berlin Alexanderplatz. It doesn't really. It made sense.
Yeah, there's different kinds of challenges.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
It's not like Tarkovsky or something. But no, going back to The Usual Suspects, I got it. I think a lot of other younger filmmakers who saw that would go try to copy it, and it was the best, I think, of those movies. With, if you want to say the trick ending, I guess, or it's by far the best of those. But it's just a great story too, and it's a great crime movie, and you really get to know each of the characters, I think, too, and you feel something for a lot of them. Gabriel Byrne, Benicio del Toro. I mean, and talk about Kevin Pollak. I mean, what a great performance from him. And the one who became Stephen Baldwin, the one who became the born again Christian. I mean, they're all really everyone's spot on.
It was a cornerstone for a touchstone for Kevin Spacey, obviously too.
Oh, it's his movie, and Pete Postlethwaite.
Good year for him. Yeah.
That was an awesome year for him.
And
that was
7.
You couldn't ask for a better year.
Yeah,
that was incredible.
I have to say about Usual Suspects, I have to chime in on this. I'm one of the few people who dislike the movie incredibly, and I think one of my main reasons for disliking the movie is that since it's a trick ending movie, and with all trick ending movies, if you can guess the trick, then the movie loses something, and for me, I guessed the trick about a third of the way through the movie. I was like, well, obviously he's the guy. I mean, because he's telling the story, so he'd be the best guy.
Great movies hold up in repeat viewings, and by repeat viewings, you know what the trick is. So I mean, the real trick of a movie is whether it holds up on second watch.
Yeah, I think it holds up very well. And I think Bryan Singer is a fascinating filmmaker. Because he's never tried to make this kind of movie again. And I would welcome another crime movie from him again. But he got really wrapped up. We talked, not to get too much off the subject, but he is one of the principal reasons why we have really good comic book adapted movies. His 2 X-Men, especially the second one. I think the second X-Men is a superb film. But he also is so good at that, he fumbled horribly with the Superman movie, but he's a fascinating. I can't wait to. He's obviously going back to X-Men, obviously, and I don't know if that's going to be good or bad. It's like Peter Jackson going back to the Lord of the Rings. I don't know. But it's just good. And also, let's not make light of the script. Christopher McQuarrie's script is. I mean, we talk about Chinatown is one of the finest written scripts. For the longest time, that was Chinatown is probably the finest literature. And I will go to the ends of the earth to defend that. It really is.
It is.
And I think this is also a case. I mean, he was very lucky. He got an Oscar, Christopher McQuarrie, and his first film that he directed is a very underrated gem.
It put him on the map. And
excuse me.
What is the movie that he directed?
The Way of the Gun.
The Way of the Gun, yeah. Which I liked even better. I actually liked better than The Usual Suspects.
It's a fantastic movie.
It put him on the map, and actually he's really building up a strong career as a director now. He is, speaking of Mission Impossible, he is Tom Cruise's pick for the next director of the 5th Mission Impossible.
I think that's a smart choice. I saw that too. I think that's a great choice. I have no qualms with that. I think he.
Now,
yeah.
Now I got to say, I don't entirely disagree with Dean. When it comes to trick endings, that's the problem with trick endings, is that, do they have an expiration date? Because once you know the trick, I mean, does it kind of not work after that point? And that's a big danger of doing those kinds of endings. I guess the big thing for me with Usual Suspects was I didn't expect the movie to have a trick ending. I thought that maybe this mystery Sosa guy would turn up. I never considered that it would be one of them. But I'm really dense when I watch movies. I mean, I really let the movie kind of happen to me in a way, and I recognize that. That being said, I always liked Usual Suspects. It was never something I was crazy about. I mean, I know that everyone around me was raving about it, and I thought it was okay. I couldn't tell you what was wrong with it necessarily. It just didn't really speak to me.
No, I understand that. But as far as trick endings go, I think this is one of the ones that does hold up. I can't go back and watch any of the M. Night Shyamalan films. I just don't, because I think that's all. No, and I don't.
Are there any other trick ending movies that you can go back to and like enjoy, even though you know the ending?
If you can name
well,
them.
I mean, I can't think of any other than M. Night Shyamalan, but well, I can't think of any
Jagged
right
Edge.
now, but.
Jagged Edge.
Or how about Angel Heart? You know.
Yeah.
Well, Angel Heart is in a class by itself.
Oh.
I mean, come on, it's Mickey Rourke. It's De Niro as the devil, but it's Mickey Rourke. And have you ever read the book that's based on? It's a great book. If you ever get a chance to read the book, it's a fantastic book. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna put Angel Heart in the category?
I was not even thinking this must have a trick ending. He must be the guy. I mean, I don't think like that when I watch movies.
Yeah, no.
I mean, even when you're watching, Jamie, even when you're watching like something that has a mystery element to it, I mean, it's a detective and they're trying to figure out something, so you don't automatically
I don't try
mode.
to figure this stuff out. I remember my acting teacher years ago saying, "Oh, that movie Sea of Love, I knew who the killer was as soon as he showed up." I said, really? In that one scene where they visit the post office, you knew that it was Michael Rooker? I said, that's complete bullshit. There's nothing to indicate.
Well, sometimes
we interviewed Michael Rooker. If we'd done the interview before, I would have said that. Yes.
Well, sometimes it's all about the casting and just the way that the film is done. You know, like the scene that they appear in or whatever. You know.
Yeah. There's something that happens now where you're prepared for a trick ending, where, you know, there's so much stuff to read out there, there's so much social media stuff, they'll say, oh, I love the trick ending, so you're expecting it, so that's when I start to look for it and figure it out.
Got to stay away from social media.
Yeah. Dean, what is your next one?
My next one's from 1991. It's by Joel and Ethan Coen. It's called Barton Fink. It's one of the absolutely weirdest movies out there. It won the Palme d'Or that year, and it also hit the record books for also winning 2 other Cannes Film Festival awards. It won Best Actor for John Turturro in the title role, and also won Best Director for the Coen brothers. It tells the story of the title character, Barton Fink, who is a snooty East Coast playwright who gets involved with Hollywood, gets invited out to Hollywood to write a wrestling picture of all things, and he absolutely doesn't know anything, even though he professes to know about the regular working man. When he gets a chance to do a movie about a regular working man that's not, you know, a fishmonger, but is actually a wrestler, he seems completely flummoxed. Mm-hmm. And he spends a lot of the time in the hotel that he checks into, the creepy hotel that he checks into, in his room, trying to figure out how to write this screenplay. But he actually gets it visited by his next door neighbor, played by John Goodman, who is a regular working man and is there to be a model for possibly for Barton Fink too. But Barton Fink is too caught up in his own head. This is a movie about heads, by the way. I mean, there's heads all over this movie. I mean, there's mentions of, endless mentioning of, like, the mind and the brain.
Okay, I thought we were talking about something else there for a second. Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah. So there's heads all over this movie, even in a little box that we never know what's in it, but we do know what's in it. So it's like the film is about, it was written by Joel and Ethan Coen at the time when they were trying to work on another film, and they got flummoxed by how to go forward with it, and they stopped working on that screenplay, and then picked up Barton, started writing about a blocked writer, and I think the film is really interesting in the sense that, well, first of all, it's one of the most well-crafted movies of the 90s. I mean, the costume design, set decoration, the photography, everything is superb. All the editing, everything in it is just absolutely astounding to look at. Plus, it has one of the greatest casts. Not only does it have John Turturro, who is superb in the title role, but it's also got Goodman and Judy Davis, Michael Lerner, who was nominated
he's perfect in this. He's perfect in this movie.
Yeah, Michael Lerner, who was nominated for the supporting actor Oscar, playing the head of the studio. John Polito as his sort of sniveling toady. Then there's Tony Shalhoub as a sort of dyspeptic producer on the lot. And then there's John Mahoney as the sort of William Faulkner-esque kind of Southern writer who's sojourning in the land of the Philistines, as he says in the movie. And the film just keeps giving and giving and giving. It's got this just crushing sort of atmosphere to it that just crushes you, and then it explodes into a finale that is just unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, the last 10 minutes of the movie is just fiery and literally fiery and incredibly there's just big question marks that appear over your head when the film finally ends with that incredible final shot, which is its own kind of trick ending that you could have not have ever had possibly seen coming. The last shot of the movie and the last line of the movie. It's just something that you couldn't. It's just like that's the perfect trick ending. You could never see it. You could never predict it.
They skewer Hollywood beautifully in that movie. They really left no stone unturned there. We talk about John Goodman having a great year this year. He was just so incredible in that movie. He's just good. God. Most of the things he's in, he does steal the movie, and I think he does a good job there. And obviously, as he did in Sea of Love or the year or 2 years before, it's a good movie, and I think it's also one of those things as iconic performances from John Turturro.
Yeah,
and it's almost like and it's in some ways because of its weirdness. I think weirdness isn't the right word, but there are a lot of odd qualities in the movie. It's a precursor to something like A Serious Man from the Coen brothers. Nearly 15 years later, and it has the same kind of rhythm to it, the geometry almost, if you will. I think Barton Fink is a very good film, and it's also one of those films because it came so shortly after Miller's Crossing, and how quick they work. I mean, they work at a ferocious rate when That's what I could not get over in the 90s, and even this, they just work at a very fast rate.
My number 9 is a movie I saw in the movie theater 8 times.
Wow.
That is Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear. I hadn't seen a thriller quite like it, in that it was different for Scorsese, and yet in this genre that was new to him, he injected everything that felt personal to him. And some critics argued, I remember it was the first movie that I started cutting out reviews that other people had written and putting them in a notebook. And I remember one review, it could have been, I'm not sure if it was Rolling Stone or probably not Rolling Stone, probably the New Yorker. Mm-hmm. The critic said that, he's imposing these themes on the movie and the movie can't carry them. It's not designed to carry them. And those themes are stuff like guilt and the whole Scorsese Catholicism thing, the difference between man and Neanderthal caveman and all this kind of stuff, and it's made pretty explicit in this. Otherwise, it's something that's designed to be a B movie thriller. Right at the end, to the end of it, when he stones De Niro to death, and then he's sitting there on shore like a caveman. Nick Nolte's character. I mean, sometimes it's very explicit, but it's about the moral lines that you cross and how that can destroy your personal sense of integrity and your relationship with your family and your relationship with what you do for a living and how that can come back to haunt you. So it is truly like a psychological thriller. I mean, it's all about the psychology. I thought that this was a great year for Nick Nolte in particular, between this and Prince of Tides, where I had problems with Prince of Tides, but definitely not with his performance. And Jessica Lange is one of my favorite actresses. I thought the movie had a very, very special, lurid look to it. I think Freddie Francis did the cinematography to it, and I love the look of it. I love the kind of the operatic nature of the Avenger that comes to haunt the family and make the man pay for his sins, and the over-the-topness of De Niro hiding under the car the whole time. And I remember every time I saw it in the theater, those 8 times, there was always a loud reaction to that shot of De Niro hanging underneath the car. Like, people started freaking out. And I love that he maintained the original theme. I mean, that even sounds like the approach of an avenging angel, that theme. And it even happens in the movie where they have De Niro walking right into the camera. I mean, eventually he's got to stop walking towards the camera, right? They said, no, walks right into it.
He runs right into that camera.
He really does, yeah. And Juliette Lewis and the scene that everybody talks about in that movie where De Niro comes on to an underage Juliette Lewis.
Right.
A very hypnotic kind of moment.
That's an amazing scene because it goes on for way longer than you expect a scene like that to keep going. I mean, it's like it appears in the middle of that film, and you're like, okay, so they're just going to let this keep going.
Yeah.
And that's a brave directorial choice. I have to say that, I was working at a theater in town that was showing that film when it came out, and I couldn't stop watching that film. I just loved it, and I'm kind of shocked to say that it's not in my top 100, though. I think I'm going to have to go back and actually change this.
It was so tightly edited too. I mean, just the crispness of the cutting is so wonderful in that movie. Yeah.
And all of the performances, even right down to Joe Don Baker, who's never been better, if you ask me. I mean, that whole scene for me, that whole movie sort of like jumped into some other world when Joe Don Baker meets his demise in the film, and the aftermath of that with and I mean I'm not going to say spoilers or whatever because I'm assuming that people who listen to this show have seen this movie, but the whole thing with him. With Nolte coming down and then slipping in the blood and getting soaked in that blood.
The awfulness
of that. The most shocking thing. That was the most shocking thing in the movie, I thought. I was like, oh, my God, oh, no.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous.
Scorsese took the thriller genre and he shot it widescreen, first of all, which is unusual for a thriller, which is usually handled in a very claustrophobic manner. With close-ups and such. He took a popular genre like the thriller. He played by those thriller rules, and yet the movie's entirely his, which is a special feat.
And it does say all of those things that you attribute to it. The whole idea. I think it's better than the original because it injects those notions of guilt and everything. Because in the original, Gregory Peck in the Nick Nolte role is just completely innocent. He hasn't had any kind of relationship with anybody outside of his marriage, and he I don't even remember in the original movie if he suppressed some kind of information in order to get a conviction. But in this particular film, they reveal that the Nolte character indeed did do this. So that injects another sort of moral complexity into the film.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
No, it's not. It is not. I mean, actually, when you go back and take a look at the original film, which is still good because it really has a great performance from Robert Mitchum in the film, who actually appears in this movie too as in a way supporting role. But and so is Martin Balsam is in the movie too, which he played the Joe Don Baker role in the original film too. But yeah, I mean, the remake really deepens the story, like to like a tremendous degree, and
so
it is absolutely one of his best.
Good. I'm glad there's agreement there. So, Dean, what is your next one?
Oh, okay. So my next one, number 8, would be the only film from this director in the entire decade. It came in 1999. It's Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. When I watched Eyes Wide Shut for the first time, it was, of course, after learning that Stanley Kubrick had passed away, and I had been invited to a screening of it by my employer at the time, who was working at Turner Network Television, which was at that time connected to, and still is connected to, Warner Brothers. And so, since it was a Warner Brothers movie, and she knew that I was a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, so she invited me to the film. And when I didn't know what to expect with Eyes Wide Shut. I don't think anybody did. That, I think, speaks to the strange critical reaction that it got, which is not unlike any other critical reaction that greeted Stanley Kubrick upon the release of any of his other movies, too, which was everybody just was like, okay, so what is this, or whatever, But I think it's great that, even now, it's proving to be a movie that people go back to and are actually getting, just like they did with all his other movies. Tom Cruise, of course, plays a doctor in New York City who, after going to a party with his wife, played by his then-wife, Nicole Kidman, he goes to a party that's hosted by a client of his, played by Sidney Pollack, and he and Kidman both have a few little dalliances during the party with members of the opposite sex, and it becomes clear that they could have broken their marriage vows to one another during that party, but they decided against it. Later on, they have after smoking a little pot, they have a kind of a snippy kind of argument about the nature of men and women, and this comes after asking what each of them did at the party, and at the culmination of this argument, there comes a moment where Tom Cruise gets a call from a client that says, we need you to come by. This is the moment that I believe is a moment in the movie where it switches from being in real life to into a dream world in which Tom Cruise is over and over repeatedly given the opportunity to cheat on his wife, but with a variety of different women, but it never really happens for him. It never really happens. And this goes into, we get into the whole orgy sequence and so forth and so on. The movie is really about the trust that needs to be present in a marriage, and it's also about the sort of deception that also needs to be a sort of a component of a marriage, and the sort of communication that needs to go on between two people engaged in a marriage in order to keep that endeavor going. It's actually quite a beautiful movie, beautifully photographed by Larry Smith, who's I know has been a guest on the show, and it's strange that it takes place during Christmas time, so it's like it's got all of these sort of dappled Christmas lights going all the way through it. It's just a movie that's just incredibly mysterious, and even
really
after you've watched it many times, it still remains, it keeps its mystery about it.
There's something very elusive about that movie, but hypnotic. I mean, it absolutely pulls you in every time, and you can't quite define how. But you can define, what makes it human, which are all the points that you just brought up. But there's also some mystery about, how he deals, like he did in every movie he did, with power, the corrosive nature of power. That's it. There's a very strong point of view about how women are treated by people in power. And there's also something weird in that when he goes on his journey, he leaves the Sonata Cafe, for instance, and he takes a taxi to the costume shop so he could buy a costume for the masked orgy ball. When he knocks on the window, the reflection of the Sonata Cafe sign can be seen in that window. So essentially, he's taken a taxi across the street. So he's going in circles that night for much of that night. I think is what he's doing. I mean, it's one contained block that he's essentially traveling around.
It's true, and that's. I mean, I know
that lends to dreamlike quality too. The kind of where you can't. It's elusive. You can't define it. I know something's happening here. It's very subtle.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who are confused by the film, I think, and I know, I from what I understand from interviews that I've read and heard from this show and so forth, that that Kubrick didn't really want it to seem like he was traveling in a dream world. But that remains kind of strange to me, and I think that's one of Kubrick's kind of sort of like he's trying to like get you off the trail a little bit because he doesn't want to have the movie explained. But the movie is based on a novel called Dream Novel by Arthur Schnitzler, who was a big proponent of
Freud,
Sigmund Freud's works and so forth. So the movie does have dream elements to it that are you can't deny. They're there, and you have to. You're forced to grapple with them, and I think. And
I think he probably didn't like defining it as a dream. Well, it's all supposition really, because he wasn't alive to talk about it. But because you can dismiss everything with, oh, well, that's a dream. That could be the all-in explanation for everything.
Well, I think that's exactly what he didn't want, and
yeah.
But I think that I mean, for those people who are clamoring for some kind of explanation for this film and for what happens in it, I think that if you look at it as just the sort of fever dream of a man that feels that his marriage is in trouble, that it's just been revealed to him that his wife had considered leaving him for another man, and if it would have worked out one smidgen of a way closer to, you know, that possibility, that it would have happened, and the whole thing would have been over. And so this is his sort of fever dream about, well, how can I get back at her, or how can I, you know, what have I missed by being in this marriage and giving up a lot of experiences that I could have had. So I think it's an incredibly profound movie. I think so too. In many, many ways.
Okay, Jerry, what's your next?
Oh, you don't want me to chime in on Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah, please do.
Cut it any time, dude.
No, I'm not going to cut. I have some manners, not many, but some. You know, it's an interesting film. I don't know if I've seen it since it was released in theaters. I've listened to like everything we've said about the film, talked about it over, you know, with Kubrick and everything. I think it is the happiest of all of his endings. I think it's the only happy ending he has in any of his films, actually.
It's true, actually.
Excuse me?
I don't know. You can look at 2001 as being sort of a happy ending in some ways.
Kind of. Kind of. But I would think
baby's
this is
gonna come to the earth and blow
the
up.
The last line of the movie is the most optimistic thing I was uttered in movies. So, let's fuck. But well, that is
an incredible last line for a movie, for a career.
Yeah. He was good at the last lines, though. He was very good at that. He was always very good at that last line. But it's a fascinating movie, and I think the one thing that's always left people until recently is that this was the last film he left us with, and we had to wait so long for this, and I can see why it was unsatisfying for a lot of people at the time. I think that's gotten, as you said, I do think the film is seen in a much better light these days.
I think so too, and the ones that still fail to embrace it do so because they don't believe it. What they're seeing is the last movie Kubrick left us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't believe this is Kubrick's movie as it should have been.
They're in denial.
Yeah,
and also because it's a very different movie for him, because it's a movie about personal relationships, which is different from just about anything else that he ever did. Maybe with the exception of Barry Lyndon and maybe Lolita, but that's it.
My mom brought up a very good point about this when she watched it. She had said that nothing has really, his view of love, sex, and marriage has not changed at all since Lolita. And I thought that was a very telling comment. She actually thought the film could have been made in the 1950s or 60s, whenever. She thought that his opinions and thoughts on the subject had not changed at all. They were almost like frozen in time. She actually thought the movie could have been made 30 years, 40 years ago.
Did she feel that? And I know your mom is a great commentator on movies. Did you feel that the film displayed sort of a negative view of marriage? Because I don't feel that at all. I think the film has
someone who's been married for 53 years. Trust me. This is a woman.
Yeah, but I mean, he was married for 40 years with the woman that he was still married with by the time he died. So I mean,
but I don't. You know, we don't. Look, we could.
He was ensconced in a very happy marriage. So
I don't associate happy with Kubrick in that sense. I think since none of us are married, and we witness marriages probably. We've been in relationships, but we know that. Everyone has their reasons for sticking together. Happiness is usually, I notice, on the bottom of the list. And having said that, I would have to go back and watch Lolita again. I'd have to go, but I always thought that was a telling observation that the movie could have easily been made.
Well, I think it's probably true because, you know, honestly, since from the beginning of time. human relationships have contained an aura of mystery to them.
Right.
And the male species hasn't figured out a lot about the female species, and
that's true.
From that beginning of time
true,
too.
Man.
I mean, those kind of human relationships, there are always those dynamics that are immortal. They'll last forever. I think there's a very positive way to look at this movie, though, and the relationship in this movie. There's a way to see that they're better off at the end of the movie because they've reached a point where they've broken down all the walls,
right?
And they're ready to accept, warts and all about the other.
They've broken down the walls. They're expanding their level of communication. And I think that makes it, and I agree, it makes it a very happy ending for the film.
And the whole scene with Dr. Ruth was cut out, where they go to sex therapy.
Right. Yeah. It's just they didn't have that too. Yeah.
Okay, Jerry, your next choice.
Well, since we were talking about Scorsese earlier, I'm just going to name this one Goodfellas.
Of course.
I kind of want to say Casino, but we did a whole show on Casino, and I love Casino. I thought it was a great how-to movie. It's an awesome how-to movie, actually. But Goodfellas, at its time, when Goodfellas is released, is the first of a whole bunch of crime movies: The Craze, The Hot Spot, After Dark, My Sweet, The Grifters, and ultimately culminating with The Godfather Part 3, the fairy tale of mob movies, the greatest fairy tale probably ever told. But Goodfellas was at the time, even though we don't look at it this way anymore, this realistic, gritty, anti-Godfather, very anti-Coppola, not in a bad way, just this anti-glamorization of the mob. Now, of course, as the movie's aged, it's anything but that. It is a total glamorization of the game.
It is. I mean, it is.
It really is.
These guys are movie stars.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as gritty as it thinks it is, but that's just age. But I think age has been very kind to it. That's another just great. You just like seeing Scorsese doing a gangster movie. It's just one of those things that you can never have too much of. Even if people thought, that people unfairly criticized Casino as being a retread of Goodfellas, I don't think they were paying attention. But Goodfellas is just perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that movie. It's just a really cool, fun, timeless film that isn't related to the antithesis of The Godfather at all. It's really not.
Well,
it's got great performances by Paul Sorvino. Every performance in the movie is golden. There's not a wasted performance in that movie. No, because everything in it feels so authentic. Yeah,
I mean that's what I think about with the movie. That's a movie that feels lived in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a movie where every detail was known very personally to Scorsese.
Mm-hmm.
And there's adrenaline to the movie,
mm-hmm.
but it also, I remember my boss when I used to manage a movie theater, and he said, I liked Goodfellas up to a point, but then the ending was such a downer. It died for me. And I said, well, that's really the point, because this movie really does pay attention to the exhilaration of being a gangster,
mm-hmm.
the camaraderie, and then the ultimate downfall. I mean, the ugliness of it, the drug addiction, the drunk on power, and having things go out of control and losing your life, and
mm-hmm.
the sacrifices that choice of life makes. I mean, it really is the rise and fall.
And he does that
what kind of ending would your boss have wanted for that movie?
He was,
he
wasn't the film critic, he was, but I said, you're absolutely right, and that's what's good about the film. If it had ended with, oh, life is great, I mean, what the hell was that movie saying?
Life did go great for Henry Hill, and he just passed away within the last year. But he became an artist. He wrote books. He was able to get out of the witness protection. I mean, he started showing himself, obviously, because all the guys who were after him were dying.
But he was also a drunken bum till the day he died.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, he was, but it was interesting because I also have to say that part of the appeal of the film, or the effect of the film, is that for at least someone like me, you read the papers, you read the obituaries, like, oh yeah, that guy, or yeah, that guy from Good. You would know all these people, all these mobsters, all these characters. The thing is, I also remember when Robert De Niro said when the movie came out, he goes, "It's nice that the movie doesn't rest on me. I'm a supporting player. I'm glad I'm not the main focal point."
Yeah.
I think the movie. I think Goodfellas is like one of the most influential movies that's ever been made, and particularly of the past 25 years. Like you see people like even going so far as let me just name two movies like one that's very good, Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, and also Ted Demi's Blow. Which I don't particularly care for. But they're both so ridiculously influenced by Goodfellas. Like, just the whole arc of Goodfellas, like how it goes up into a peak until the third act and then comes crashing down. The costume design, the set decoration, the choice of music, which it has to be Scorsese's greatest. I mean, he's always been great at doing source music scores, but to me, his score for Goodfellas goes into the stratosphere.
Right.
And I think it's something that he wasn't able to do. Even though I liked Casino, he tried to do it again with Casino, and it didn't quite work as well in Casino. But and I think the reason that the source music score works so well with Goodfellas is that there's such an expanse of time that's covered in Goodfellas as opposed to Casino, which is really localed and really maybe like 5 or 6 years, But Goodfellas goes over 2 decades. So there's this sense of time passing, and you learn about time passing through the way the music is being portrayed in the film. But you're so right, Jerry, that every single performance in the film is absolutely perfect, right down to just those guys that Henry Hill is going, the childhood Henry Hill is going in to visit at that. It says, he's remembering all of the people, and there was Jimmy 2 times that says everything 2 times, and all of those guys that he sees, every single one of them just look like absolutely perfect, and the movie obviously had an incredible effect even into the 2000s on The Sopranos, because a lot of the people who are in Goodfellas appeared in The Sopranos as well. So
big time.
Outside of The Godfather, what is the only gangster movie that can give The Godfather a run for its money from the past 50 years, 40 years?
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.